Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are on Friday, December 13th. We're going to take a look at SoundHound today. So SoundHound is getting through the levels that we had on the chart. So I'm going to add some Fibonacci extensions since we don't have really much of any worthwhile previous price action to go off of, right? We have this, which, yeah, I mean, there's just nothing repetitive in here on the daily, so it's not going to provide much. If you zoom out, and if I can get this whole thing on the chart at once, or you can sort of like see where it is, right? It's up in the 18s. You know, it's sort of gearing toward just this one giant double top or giant cup, right? So depending on, what you think may happen in the future, double top, which maybe would lead to a sell-off, or a cup, a giant cup and a handle. Who knows? It doesn't have to be either of those things. It could just sort of blow right through it, which I guess would then just not be a double top at all. But it could certainly blow through that previous high of 1814. But it's getting, as you see here on the weekly, like mighty close to that range, especially when it has days where it can move 20% or more. That's just going to continue to be the case. It's had several of these days in the recent past. So let's put in some fibs, see where it is. Before I do that, because it's going to clutter the chart a little bit, let's just acknowledge that this 1451, if it does pull back, that's the nearest in support level that I see that feels really strong. There's probably something here around, yeah, okay, so $14.99. So like that psychological $15 level could come into play, but there's not a ton of price action to go off of there. So I'm reluctant to add another blue line in there at the moment. Similarly, if it does lose 1451, there's something here I would feel pretty confident that's developing around like 1372 for whatever reason. But again, I'm not going to put that in to clutter the chart for the moment because it can have these wild swings. So having the space between 1451 and 1262 might be fine. But we'll see what happens. If it starts to really knock around that like 13 to 15 range, then maybe we'll put in that 1372. But for now, my focus is on if it continues to push. And if it does, we want some fib extension levels in there. I'm going to go off of this really quick double bottom here up to the previous swing high here, and then our dip down there. So if that all holds, these are the levels in yellow that I would look for. Let me see if we can capture any of the other ones. Maybe if we zoom out to the weekly. Okay, so here's the fib extension levels that I'm going to have for now, at least. We have 1605 to the is the closest in level in either direction. So if you're looking for immediate support to continue to build, 1605 would be the place for it to do so. If it can continue pushing, 1708, 1812, 1959. So these are potential price targets if you want to look at it that way. I look at it more as these are places where things might get sticky, or things where, say, if it blows through 1708 but falls short of 1812, maybe I would look for it to come down and reconfirm 1708, which may sort of indicate that it did sort of the healthy thing, right? It had a big burst, took a breath by pulling back a little bit, and then reconfirmed the support level that we thought that it should have. But those are the levels that I'm going to look at to the upside: 1708, 1812, 1959. Now, if we hide these for a sec, let me go back to the daily. Let's see where things are looking on the EMA. Yeah, so pushing nicely off of the 8. So exactly what you'd want to see. So you have this sort of initial run up, right? You have this sort of initial pullback here to the 21. This was on November 19th. And then the push begins, right? And it's holding court. It's holding steady over that white 8 EMA. And then, just every time it has a brief pullback, it's jumping right off of that 8. We see it here, 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 here. So that's exactly what you want to see in a stock, no matter how bubbly it's been lately, right? No matter how much bullish momentum it's already exhausted itself through. What you want to see, if there is potential for continued additional bullish momentum gas still in the tank, what you're looking for is bouncing off of that 8, right? Not needing to pull back to that 21. If it pulls back to that 21, the peach colored one here, that is not the be all end all. That doesn't mean rally's over, doesn't mean like it's back to the basement, anything like that. It could just mean that the bullish momentum that was there is fizzling a bit, right? It's receding a bit. Could additional catalysts come in that could reignite that? For sure. But that's something to maybe keep a closer eye on. As it continues to pound off of the 8 and bounce right off of it, that to me does say, as we're seeing at this very moment on Friday, that there's more bullish momentum to work through. So, I would sort of tend to continue to be of that mindset until we see something dipping below the 8, right? Something more like this, right? Where it's comes down and works itself through the 8 and starts treating it more as resistance than support. And that might look, if it's a little bit slower of a grind, I don't have a great example, but it might just sort of be weaving a little bit above, a little bit below, a little bit above, a little bit below for a period of time, right? And that might be sort of the initial indication that, okay, maybe things are getting a little bit tired. But until it like flips it from support to resistance and really starts to sort of pull back toward that 21, I would tend to see this as stronger potential for more bullish momentum to be worked through. Plenty of volume floors here, right? Plenty of layers to work off of. We see big floors here. Above 1350 and into 14. Gets a little bit thinner as you approach that like 15 range. But that's fresh volume that's getting put in. The only prior volume was going to be way back here, right? And you can see what that looks like there. There was just much more coming in to buy it up in the low single digits than there were folks willing to step in up here. So, will that repeat itself in some way, shape, or form? I don't know. Everything looks very different at this point, so I'm not going to place too much off of that. So I'm happy to go off of just sort of where things have been falling since this push really began, which you could, I'm calling it here like at this push really beginning in the like 5 to 6 range. You could even trace it back much, much further than that if you wanted, but that's sort of where I'm focused at the moment. I feel that gives sort of a pretty good representation. So be looking for volume to be put in here and see how that starts to take shape over time. I'm actually sort of surprised at this. I thought that the total profited shares would be higher than about 30%, which is what Webull is showing at the moment. So if that's accurate, it's kind of surprising, but yeah, we'll see what folks want to do with that as those things play out as well. Flipping over here to the think or swim side of things, if we want to take into account some additional levels, not much interesting happening here at the TTM squeeze indicator, though I would say that this trigger and fire, which was really a re-trigger and a refire from back here. So triggered, fired, nothing happened, re-trigger, refire. This is a common thing that we see quite frequently, the retrigger and refire, resulting in a real big move. And then here we go. So it's blown through all of the ATR levels for December, which is fine. Coming into January, for the time being at least, it's looking like the call trigger, at least for now, is situated somewhere around 1650-ish range with a +1 ATR up into the mid-18s, right? Around 1859 or so at the moment. So that'll shift as additional price action gets put in. These are all dynamic levels. But just to give you some concept of, if it were to head into January right now, right at this price point, this is about where the ATR levels would be situated. But like I said, that's going to change over the next couple of weeks when we get through the additional candles that get put in for December. On the phase oscillator, it's getting a little bit on the upper edge of things at 110. To me, I've said this before. I keep this at the bottom because it's kind of the last thing that I look for as sort of a data gathering set piece. But yeah, it's getting a little bit up there. But to me, that phase oscillator up to 110 shouldn't be sort of a deciding factor in kind of what happens next. But aside from this stuff and that, I feel most confident in what I'm seeing here on the Webull chart. I sort of feel of equal interest in looking at the levels that we have in the chart, including the fib extension levels and the EMA setup, because the EMA setup, it is close proximity to that 8. And so continuing to see what it does on or at that 8 EMA is, to me, of pretty strong importance. Being that there is quite a range between the 8 and the 21, right? Everything is so spread out because of the volatility at the moment. I would maybe lean, personally, a little bit more on these levels because they are a bit tighter in, right? We have more levels in between than there is space between that 8 and that 21 EMA. So having a few more levels to base action off of can be helpful, so you're not just waiting to see what it does at the 8 or waiting to see what it does at the 21. You have these levels that you've already set on the chart that you can draw from and say, okay, it's not to the 21 yet, but I can see what it's doing off of the 1450 level, right, for example, something like that. All right, folks, so I hope that you've had a good trading week, and as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.